Hey guys, tonight we're floating somewhere you've probably never been invited before, high above the mortal world, where the clouds glow gold and the air smells faintly of lightning and honey. The gods of Olympus are restless, and you, somehow, have found yourself among them. Hera, queen of everything that glitters and nags, has decided to host the very first divine dinner party. You can almost hear the panic in the wind. You probably won't survive this. Socially, at least. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop your location and your local time in the comments. I love seeing where in the world you're tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're lying on a soft cloud, still groggy from the nap that started somewhere near Corinth, when the wind shifts and whispers your name. A dove lands beside you, no ordinary dove, but one carrying a scroll sealed with a faint shimmer of gold dust. The seal reads, in looping celestial handwriting, "By command of Hera, Queen of the Heavens, Keeper of Matrimony, Supreme Arbiter of Petty Disputes." You sigh before even reading further. There's no mistaking it. This is an invitation to Olympus. The message unfolds itself, glowing faintly. Hera, in her eternal quest to outshine every mortal and immortal hostess, has declared she will hold a dinner to unite the heavens. Historians still argue whether this event was meant as an olive branch after the latest divine squabble, or simply an excuse to one-up Aphrodite's eternal garden brunch. Either way, you're expected. The gods, as it turns out, are terrible at logistics. Your cloud taxi is late, the directions are cryptic. Ascend until dizziness sets in, continue another 3 furlongs. And no one agrees on whether Olympus has an official parking area. You finally drift upward through cotton-thick mist until the air turns bright with static and laughter. Below you, mortal Greece glimmers faintly like candlelight. At the summit, the palace of Olympus gleams like polished marble dipped in sunset. You can smell ambrosia already, something like honey, peaches, and the faint electric scent before a storm. Hera stands at the top of the steps, regal as a statue come to life, her peacock feather robe rippling in slow motion, even though there's no wind. She's holding a bronze clipboard, because of course she is. "Ah, mortal, you're early. That's unexpected." You're not sure if that's a compliment or a cosmic insult. She flicks her stylus across a golden tablet, checking your name off some invisible list. You notice she's already stressed, her tiara slightly askew, a faint thundercloud forming behind her left shoulder. It's the universal expression of a hostess who realizes she may have overcommitted. The scene around you is magnificent chaos. Servants made of starlight are polishing pillars. Nymphs are tuning lyres that occasionally turn into birds and fly away. Somewhere in the distance, Hermes zips past, muttering about urgent deliveries and dropping glittering envelopes as he goes. You catch one mid-air. It's addressed to Poseidon, embossed with shells that still smell faintly of ocean spray. Rumor has it, Hera decided on this dinner party after a particularly loud argument between Zeus and Poseidon about who owned the Aegean's nicest cliff. She'd declared, "Let's dine like civilized immortals." What she didn't realize was that immortals are incapable of dining like civilized anything. You wander into the grand hall, a cathedral of marble so polished that it reflects the sky itself. There's a massive table that seems to stretch into the horizon, already set with plates carved from moonstone. The decorations are impossibly extra. Gold ivy, celestial candlelight, and place cards that rearrange themselves every few minutes, apparently confused about the politics of divine seating. A servant offers you a taste of preliminary nectar. It tastes like sunlight filtered through jasmine, and also like regret. It burns slightly going down, as if reminding you that mortals were never built for this level of decadence. You cough softly, and the servant bows. "First-timers often do," he says sympathetically.
Far above, thunder rolls. Zeus is testing the acoustics, someone mutters. Another voice replies that he's just showing off. There's a soft ripple of laughter, half admiration, half exhaustion. You get the sense these gods have been stuck with each other for a very, very long time. It's strange to see divinity so disorganized. Athena is pacing, muttering about strategy. Apollo's sun chariot is parked diagonally across two divine spaces, and Artemis is threatening to tow it. Even Hestia, calm goddess of the hearth, is fanning her temples with a glowing ember and sighing, "Every time, Hera, every time." One lesser-known myth claims that this first dinner was the true origin of bureaucracy. Ancient poets say Hermes invented RSVP cards just to survive the chaos. Another, more mischievous version says Hera merely wanted to distract Zeus from flirting with nymphs by keeping him busy with menu approval. Scholars still debate which is more likely. You drift closer to the balcony, where the clouds part to reveal the mortal world far below. Farmers light tiny fires, unaware that the weather above them is being dictated by divine dinner anxiety. Somewhere, a philosopher in Athens will later write, "The gods feast as mortals pray," and you'll almost feel guilty for knowing how accurate that is. But there's no time for reflection. Hera's voice rings through the hall like a bell made of marble. "Preparations must begin immediately." Her tone could turn milk to cheese. The gods scatter. You, apparently, are assigned to assist with atmospheric harmony, whatever that means. Zephyr, the west wind, swoops by and whispers, "Just make sure the air smells pleasant and no one catches on fire. That's harmony." You nod solemnly, as if this is your natural area of expertise. The day stretches long and bright. You watch Hephaestus hammer cutlery that glows like molten silver. Nymphs set up fountains that occasionally burp lightning. Someone sneezes, and a small constellation appears overhead, briefly spelling, "Help." By twilight, the mountain hums with divine tension. You've survived the invitation phase, and the real storm, figuratively and literally, is about to begin. Hera walks past again, clutching her clipboard, muttering, "This time it will be perfect." The thundercloud above her shoulder disagrees with a quiet rumble. And as the first star flickers into view above Olympus, you realize you're no longer a bystander. You've become part of the myth, a mortal caught in the machinery of divine hospitality, hoping to make it through the night without becoming a footnote in an epic poem.
The next morning, or maybe the same endless divine afternoon, you wake to what sounds like the heavens having a nervous breakdown. The entire peak of Olympus is vibrating with activity. You can't tell if that faint trembling under your feet is an earthquake or just Hermes frantically zipping from room to room, shouting, "Delivery from the underworld! Sign here, please!" Everywhere you look, gods and lesser deities are in full-blown panic mode. The Great Hall now resembles an upscale construction site. Marble dust, fluting ribbons of starlight, and a dozen demigods holding clipboards like they're auditioning for a celestial management drama. Hera stands in the center of it all, issuing orders in a voice that could part oceans or marriages. She's determined that tonight's dinner will be the event of the millennia. You overhear her mutter, "If Aphrodite can have a garden party that trends for 3 centuries, I can host a dinner that shapes eternity." Historians still argue whether Hera truly said those words, or whether it was later added by poets for dramatic flair. But judging by her expression, it feels authentic. The first item on her checklist, the weather. Of course, Zeus is in charge. Unfortunately, controlling the weather for him usually involves bragging. "I can make lightning that tastes like cinnamon," he announces proudly. "No, dear," Hera replies without looking up. "We need clear skies, not dessert."
You sneak outside and glance over Olympus's balcony. The world below is bright and dizzyingly far away. Mortals in Athens are probably arguing about geometry, unaware that a domestic spat in the heavens might change their forecast to light thunderstorm with occasional divine mood swings. The air hums with half-finished tasks. Hephaestus is adjusting a giant chandelier made of melted comets. Ares is testing the party playlist, which currently consists of loud battle hymns and an occasional roar of approval. Too aggressive, Hestia sighs, her calm firelight dimming slightly. This is a dinner, not a siege. You're pulled into the fray when Hera snaps your fingers and points directly at you. You there, mortal intern. Assist Hermes with the invitations. Hermes appears out of nowhere, literally materializing from thin air with an exhausted grin. His arms are full of glittering envelopes that seem to wriggle like living fish. Okay, Hermes says quickly, handing you a stack. Each one goes to a god, demigod, or problematic mythological figure. Some addresses are tricky. Don't read the names aloud, especially not the one that starts with Eris. We don't talk about Eris. You nod obediently, but of course, curiosity wins. You peek at one. To Poseidon, Lord of the Seas, occasional storm hazard, please RSVP promptly. Another reads, To Artemis, hunt for your own invitation if you must. And then one glints ominously. To Eris. You decide Hermes was right, probably best not to say that one aloud.
According to a few Orphic fragments, this was the very day Hermes invented the concept of express delivery. Before this, messages between gods took centuries, mostly due to passive-aggressive delays. But Hera's impatience apparently birthed divine logistics. Historians still argue whether this is why modern couriers swear so much. By midday, the mountain buzzes like a hive. Apollo is adjusting sunbeams for better ambiance lighting. Artemis is glaring at him for blinding her forest nymph assistants. The Graces are arguing about centerpiece aesthetics, debating whether celestial lilies or star anemones are too much sparkle. Even Athena looks mildly stressed, muttering, strategy fails against glitter. You spot a small commotion near the kitchens. Dionysus, god of wine and mischief, has arrived early, drunk, naturally, on quality assurance. He's taste-testing amphoras with a seriousness that borders on academic. You can't rush excellence, he insists, pouring another cup. You can only swirl it until it tells you secrets. A kitchen nymph leans toward you and whispers, Last time he tested wine, half the party forgot who they were for a century. You quietly take a step back. Hera's booming voice interrupts the chaos again. Everything must be perfect, she declares, clutching her clipboard like a scepter. The clipboard glows faintly as if terrified of being found inadequate. Zeus, make sure the lightning is decorative, not destructive. Athena, please ensure Ares doesn't duel the waitstaff again.
Ares, who has been sharpening his spear on a marble column, pretends not to hear. You suspect he's only attending because last time he skipped an event, Hera sent him a strongly worded dream that gave him indigestion for weeks. You wander into the grand corridor, where the mosaics themselves are being polished. Each tile reflects fragments of myth. Perseus mid-swing, Helen staring dramatically into infinity, a minotaur who looks like he's reconsidering his career path. The air smells of lemon oil and ambition. Somewhere near the eastern balcony, Aphrodite's attendants are unpacking perfume amphoras the size of small carriages. The goddess insists on an atmosphere of irresistible allure, one servant sighs. We've gone through 6 scents and 17 mortal poets already. You cough delicately as the air thickens with floral divinity and mild headache. Meanwhile, Hermes reappears beside you, dusting off his winged sandals. Invitations delivered, mostly, he says, winking, except to the underworld. Hades insists on facts. You're not sure what a fax is, but Hermes says it with the conviction of someone who's already invented it and regrets everything. He pauses, eyes narrowing mischievously. He says, "You know, historians still argue whether this dinner was Hera's attempt at diplomacy or just a thinly disguised reality show pilot." You laugh nervously, realizing that with gods involved, either option could cause an apocalypse. By late afternoon, the great hall gleams. Chandeliers shimmer with captive starlight. The marble floor reflects entire constellations. Every corner smells faintly of ambrosia and anxiety. Hera walks through it all like a general before battle, inspecting, adjusting, judging. You almost admire her determination. Almost.
A faint rumble rolls through the hall. It's Zeus again, testing thunder volume for the evening entrance. "Just a light drizzle of drama," he calls. Hera exhales sharply. "If you ruin my linens, I will personally invent a second underworld just for you." And somehow, the gods fall silent for a moment. Even the air itself seems to hold its breath. You realize you're standing at the center of mythic anticipation, the calm before Olympus tries to outdo itself. As twilight stains the sky violet and gold, Hera finally relaxes, slightly. She turns to you, mortal assistant extraordinaire, and says, "We might just pull this off." The moment almost feels peaceful until Hermes bursts back in, clutching one last unopened envelope. This one's from Eris." The seal cracks itself open, releasing a faint shimmer of discord that curls into the air like perfume. The note inside reads, "See you at dinner." You and Hera exchange the same horrified look. Somewhere far below, a mortal rooster crows, completely unaware that the gods are about to experience the world's first RSVP-induced existential crisis.
You barely sleep that night. Between Hera's distant shouting, Zeus's thunder rehearsals, and Hermes' faintly echoing panic about Eris being on the guest list, Mount Olympus hums with the kind of energy that mortals associate with both festivals and catastrophes. When dawn breaks, the clouds are tinted champagne gold, and the entire palace smells like over-polished marble and impending social tension. The first thing you see when you open your eyes is a marble tablet hovering inches from your face. On it, in looping gold script, it reads, "Congratulations! You've been promoted to seating coordinator." Somewhere behind the scroll, Hera's voice carries down the corridor. "If anyone can arrange harmony, it's the mortal. Mortals understand discomfort." You're not sure whether to feel honored or deeply insulted. You shuffle toward the great hall, clutching your stylus like a soldier about to enter battle. Before you stretches the longest dining table ever conceived, possibly by accident, since Hephaestus built it using leftover constellations. The table runs so far, it curves with the horizon, and the chairs gleam like moonlight frozen into furniture. The challenge? Deciding which divine ego gets to sit beside which divine ego without causing another Trojan war. Hera appears beside you, clipboard at the ready. "We must have balance," she says, eyes flashing. "Opposites attract. But also, never place Poseidon near Athena. And Zeus must feel honored, but not too honored." She leans in conspiratorially. "If he thinks it's his party, he'll invite thunder." You glance at the list. The Olympians alone could fill a stadium. Zeus, Poseidon, Athena, Apollo, Artemis, Aphrodite, Ares, Hermes, Demeter, Hestia, Dionysus, and that's before the Muses, minor wind deities, and assorted mythic freeloaders. Historians still argue whether Hera invented the concept of assigned seating that day,
or whether she merely perfected micromanagement. You start sketching possible arrangements, muttering names to yourself. Apollo next to the Muses. No, too loud. Athena beside Hermes. Intellectual banter, possibly tolerable. Ares opposite Hestia. That's chaos versus calm. Could balance, or could explode. You erase half the plan and sigh. The stylus is sweating. No, you are sweating, but the stylus looks guilty. A faint shimmer appears to your left. Hermes, holding a scroll of his own. Need help? He asks, far too cheerfully. I've seen worse. Once had to seat titans by height. He peers over your shoulder and grins. Oh, bold choice putting Aphrodite near Hera. You like danger. You groan. I'm trying for symmetry. Symmetry is the enemy of sanity, Hermes says wisely, before vanishing again with a pop of ozone. The truth is, seating arrangements on Olympus are basically diplomacy disguised as interior design. Every choice carries history, rivalry, and subtext older than humanity itself. Athena and Poseidon still glare across centuries over who got Athens. Apollo and Artemis have sibling tension sharper than their arrows. Even Hestia, goddess of hearth and calm, once threatened to leave the table when Ares brought a boar as a centerpiece. You pause by the head of the table. The grandest chair, Zeus's obviously, crackles faintly with static. Hera's throne sits beside it, carved from pure pearl and inscribed with 1,000 invisible sighs. But the true power spot, you realize, isn't at the head. It's the seat across from them, where whoever sits will catch every divine glance, whisper, and lightning flicker. Maybe that's why Hera calls you back moments later. Mortal, she says, tapping her stylus against her chin. Where should I place Eris? You freeze. The goddess of discord? Yes, she RSVP'd. Apparently, politely declining is against her religion. Hera's smile tightens. So, where? You scan the table desperately. You can't seat her near Aphrodite. Too much drama history. Not next to Ares. They once co-hosted a war. Not beside Hermes. They might invent sarcasm itself. Finally, you point to the far end of the table, near the dessert section. There. She can't cause much trouble from there. Hera nods, though you sense she's unconvinced. We'll see. Throughout the morning, the table setting becomes a living artwork. Nymphs glide by, placing bowls of starlight fruit and pitchers that refill themselves with liquid moonshine. Appear, shimmer, and adjust to the exact favorite color of whoever will sit there. Ares's plate turns blood red, Apollo's gold, Dionysus's predictably wine-stained purple. You overhear Hephaestus complaining about the chairs. They keep fusing with the floor when Zeus gets moody. Hestia replies, It's not the chairs, it's his ego. A quiet chuckle ripples through the divine crew. Even the marble pillars seem to hum with amusement. There's a strange comfort in this chaos, a rhythm, almost human. Despite their power, the gods bicker over details like anyone planning a big event. It's reassuring in a cosmic way to know that even immortality can't protect you from the horrors of social seating. By mid-afternoon, you've rearranged the plan 7 times. Each change sparks new arguments. Apollo insists on facing west for the lighting. Poseidon refuses to sit near anything that smells like dry land. Athena wants the philosophers closer to her end so she can accidentally start a debate. Hera sighs through it all, scribbling and erasing so fast her stylus begins to smoke. At one point, Ares storms in, slams his spear against the table, and demands a strategic corner seat. Hera doesn't even look up. You can have whichever seat survives your tantrum. He grins, takes a chair, and it immediately bursts into harmless golden flames. "I'll stand," he says. You can't help laughing, and to your surprise, Hera laughs too, a rare, sharp sound like glass breaking and turning into bells. "You mortals," she says, shaking her head. "You find us amusing?" You shrug. "You act a lot like us, just louder." She studies you for a long moment, the corners of her mouth curving slightly. "Perhaps that's why Zeus tolerates you. You remind him of his better storms." By sunset, the seating chart gleams in perfect celestial symmetry. You hold it up proudly, ink glowing faintly in the fading light. Hera inspects it, eyes scanning like a general before battle. Finally, she nods. "Acceptable. Miraculously." A breeze stirs from nowhere. Soft at first, then stronger. You look up to see the horizon flicker. Stormlight gathers around Olympus. Zeus is checking the ambiance again, but it feels intentional this time. As the last rays of sun fade, you catch your reflection in the marble floor. A mortal, speck amid legends, holding a pen that just might decide how peacefully eternity eats dinner tonight. Then Hermes pops in one last time. "Hey," he says, pointing at the chart. "You forgot someone." You frown. "Who?" He grins. "You." You glance down, and sure enough, no name, no seat. Hera overhears and smirks. "Oh, don't worry, mortal. You'll find your place soon enough." She taps the clipboard, and before you can ask where, the ink reshapes itself into words that chill your spine. "Standing near the wine fountain."
You're beginning to suspect that Olympus invented anxiety. The next morning, before the mist even clears from the mountain peaks, Dionysus barges into the great hall, dragging an entire cart of glowing amphoras behind him. "Time for the taste test," he bellows. "Can't have the nectar clashing with the ambrosia." Hera's eye twitches. "Nothing clashes with ambrosia," she says. "It's literally divine." Dionysus winks at you. "Then let's prove it." He uncorks an amphora the size of a mortal bathtub. The smell hits you instantly. Grapes, roses, thunder, and possibly mild hallucination. The liquid inside glows a soft violet, like the moment before night swallows sunset. You lean forward cautiously as Dionysus dips a ladle and pours a sample into a chalice. "Go on," he says. "Mortal perspective is valuable. You lot have taste buds that actually retire early." You sip and immediately regret it. The flavor is overwhelming. Honey, sunlight, smoke, and something metallic like biting into a melody. You cough, eyes watering. Dionysus grins. "Good, right?" You manage. "It tastes like lightning and regret." He laughs so loudly the amphoras vibrate. Hera sighs, pinching the bridge of her nose. "We can't serve anything that makes the staff cry, Dionysus." "Fine, fine," he says, swirling the ladle dramatically. "Maybe a touch less despair, more euphoria." He adds what appears to be stardust, or possibly crushed dreams. The mixture fizzes. You back away slowly. Historians still argue whether Dionysus truly invented mixology that day,
or whether he simply ruined chemistry for everyone forever. Across the hall, nymphs carry trays of ambrosia to a side table. The food glows faintly, each piece shifting colors as if alive. You're told this is normal. Ambrosia adapts, one nymph explains. It tastes like whatever the eater desires most. You say, "That sounds dangerous." She shrugs. So is love. The gods don't see a difference. You reach out and touch a piece the size of a peach slice. It hums faintly, warm against your fingers. "Careful," Hera calls. "That's not for mortals." "Why not?" you ask. "Because immortality doesn't suit everyone. Some people would just spend forever trying to fix dinner parties." You grin. Sounds familiar. She doesn't laugh. By midday, the kitchens are chaos. Hephaestus's mechanical ovens belch sparks. A satyr sous chef is stirring something with a trident. Two dryads are arguing about the correct temperature for celestial soufflé, while Hermes zips in and out delivering last-minute requests. Poseidon wants sea salt sprinkles. And Ares demands something that bleeds when you cut it. You make a note not to sample that one. The air thickens with aromas: honey, olive oil, myrrh, smoke. It's overwhelming but oddly comforting, like being wrapped in a myth that's still cooking. You overhear a pair of servants whispering, "Do you think Hera is doing this to impress Zeus again?" The other shakes her head. "No, she's doing it to remind him she doesn't need to." Some scholars later argued that Hera's dinner parties were a form of soft rebellion, her way of asserting control in a pantheon run by lightning and ego. Others think she just really liked judging people's table manners. Dionysus leans on the counter beside you, swirling another cup. "You know," he says conversationally, "mortal myths always say ambrosia grants eternal youth. But what they forget is that eternity tastes different for everyone." He tilts the cup toward you, spilling a drop on the marble. The liquid evaporates instantly, leaving behind a faint musical note. "For me, it's a song that never ends. For Hera, it's control. For Zeus, probably applause." You ask what it tastes like for mortals. He considers. "Hope," he says, softly. "And that's why you shouldn't have too much." The god of wine isn't supposed to sound wise, but here he is, half-drunk philosopher with grape stains on his toga, speaking truths that linger longer than the drink. Then, inevitably, something explodes. A golden pot erupts in a puff of blue smoke, scattering pastries across the kitchen. Hera appears in the doorway instantly, arms crossed. "What happened now?" "Experimental flavor testing," Hephaestus says defensively, holding a molten ladle. "Of what?" He squints. "I forget. It ran away." Hera sighs the sigh of someone who's regretted every decision since the dawn of time. She turns to you. "Go check the dessert table. Make sure it hasn't developed opinions." You obey, weaving through the chaos. The dessert table is indeed active. A pyramid of glowing cakes hums faintly, rearranging itself every few seconds into different shapes: mountains, ships, swans. "They're trying to be symbolic," a nymph says helplessly. You gently pat one slice. It hums in response, vibrating under your hand. You whisper, "Please don't become sentient." Outside, a gust of wind announces Hermes' return. "Invitations confirmed," he says, handing Hera a scroll. "All Olympians are attending." Even Hades is sending a proxy. Persephone will represent. Hera's eyes widen. Persephone? Oh, splendid. At least someone with taste. Also, Hermes adds, Ares confirmed her attendance. She requested a centerpiece made of golden apples, said it's symbolic. Every immortal in the room freezes. Even the desserts stop moving. You feel the air shift, heavy and sharp. Hera sets the scroll down slowly. No apples, she says. Not even decorative ones. Someone hide the orchards. You vaguely remember the myth. Eris, goddess of discord, once threw a golden apple inscribed, "To the fairest," sparking an argument that led, eventually, to the Trojan War. If she brings another tonight, this dinner might start something worse than history. A sequel. The afternoon drags on, filled with whispers, polishing, and periodic explosions. You help hang starlit garlands while thunder mutters distantly like a bored stagehand. Hera passes occasionally, inspecting everything with a perfectionist stare. "This will be the night Olympus remembers," she says. Hermes, floating nearby, murmurs, "Historians still argue whether that's a promise or a threat." By dusk, the table glows like dawn captured in marble. The ambrosia has stopped singing, the wine has stopped fizzing, and even Dionysus has decided it's good enough. The gods are beginning to gather, shadows and laughter drifting through the corridors. You take a final look around, food shimmering faintly, goblets full, chairs in place. Hera stands at the far end of the hall, serene in the eye of her own hurricane. She catches your gaze and nods once. If it goes well, I might almost forgive the universe for existing. You open your mouth to reply, but then a new smell hits the air. Sweet, metallic, familiar. You turn just in time to see Eris stepping through the doorway, a faint smirk on her lips, and in her hands, of course, a golden apple.
There are silences in Olympus that no mortal ever hears about. Silences that roll through the marble halls heavier than thunder. This is one of them. Eris, goddess of discord, doesn't enter so much as glide, each step deliberate, her golden apple glinting like a bad idea in perfect lighting. "A small token," she says sweetly, her voice curling like smoke, "a gift for the hostess." Every god in the hall shifts subtly backward, except for Dionysus, who raises his cup in delight. "Oh, splendid! You brought dessert!" Hera's smile doesn't move. "That," she says, "is not dessert." Eris tilts her head, pretending innocence. "Then it's art. One must always have a centerpiece." The apple hums faintly, the letters beginning to shimmer across its surface. Te Kalisti, to the fairest. You can almost hear history tightening like a bowstring. "Not here," Hera says, "not tonight." "Why not?" Eris replies lightly. "You said this would be a gathering of all Olympians. And what's a gathering without a little conversation?" Zeus's thunder mutters faintly outside, as if the sky itself is listening. Hera steps closer, voice calm but sharp. "We are celebrating unity." Eris smiles. "Exactly. I'm helping test it." You, the mortal observer, would very much like to disappear into a decorative urn at this point.
Instead, you glance toward Dionysus, hoping for some divine comic relief. He's busy whispering to a satyr about how much chaos is acceptable before wine counts as necessary medicine.
Aphrodite glides forward then, all soft light and sharper intent. "If that apple's meant for the fairest," she says lazily, "it's obviously mine." Athena arches an eyebrow. "Beauty without wisdom is decoration." "And wisdom without beauty," Aphrodite says, "is paperwork." The silence thickens again. You wonder if mortals are allergic to divine tension. Eris sets the apple gently onto the table. "See," she says, beaming, "now you're all talking." It glows brighter, not dangerously, not yet, just enough to throw ripples of gold over the polished marble. Hera gestures to you subtly. A mortal hand is neutral, less likely to trigger divine politics. "Remove it," she murmurs. You take a cautious step forward. The apple hums louder, vibrating faintly as you reach for it. The letters shimmer again, rearranging themselves just for an instant. "To the hungriest." You blink, then they revert. You wonder if you imagined it. "Go on," Eris says, eyes glinting. "Mortals love forbidden fruit. It's practically your brand." You lift the apple carefully. It's warm, heavier than gold should be, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. Every god in the room watches you. For a moment, Olympus is utterly still. No laughter, no thunder, no divine bickering, just the quiet of a myth holding its breath.
Then Hera waves a hand and the apple vanishes. Not destroyed, merely displaced. "We will not play that game again," she says softly. Eris shrugs. "You always spoil the fun." "Fun," Hera replies, "is mortals thinking they can understand us. I prefer peace." Dionysus, half laughing, raises his cup again. "Peace is overrated, but I'll drink to the attempt." The tension cracks. Conversation resumes, forced but flowing. Music drifts in, lyres, soft drums, something like wind given rhythm. The hall comes alive again. Gods chatting, laughter like glass bells, servants darting like comets. You exhale. You hadn't realized you'd been holding your breath. Later, as the feast truly begins, you find yourself seated near the lower end of the divine table, somewhere between Hermes, who's narrating his own jokes, and a pair of muses debating which mortal poets are most aesthetically tragic. Plates shimmer before you, lamb glazed with starlight, olives filled with whispers of dreams, bread that tastes faintly of memory. Hera sits at the head of the table, composed, flawless. Eris sits farther down, smiling too politely. Then the storytelling begins, as it always does on Olympus. Each god takes turns recounting their latest exploit, exaggerating shamelessly. Poseidon tells a tale about taming a sea serpent the size of Crete. Apollo plays a melody so perfect mortals invented tears. Dionysus claims to have taught mortals how to argue with inanimate objects and win.
When it's your turn, somehow, impossibly, Hera gestures to you. Every immortal eye turns your way. "A mortal story," she says, "for balance." You panic internally. What story could possibly interest gods who've invented thunder, war, and art? So you tell something small. You talk about a quiet mortal morning, sunlight over rooftops, bread baking, the soft rhythm of an ordinary life.
You tell them how mortals watch the sky and imagine stories in the clouds because they can't help wanting to belong to something larger. When you finish, the room is silent again, but not tense this time, just thoughtful. Zeus nods once, a rare gesture of approval. "Mortals," he says, "remember what we forget." Aphrodite sighs softly. "And what's that?" "That there's beauty in ending," he says. Even Eris looks briefly uncertain. For a heartbeat, Olympus feels almost human.
Then Dionysus slams his cup down and declares, "All right, philosophy breaks over. Someone fetch the flaming cheese!" Laughter ripples through the hall. Music swells. The moment passes, but something lingers. The strange, fragile understanding that even the gods envy mortals for how briefly they burn. Outside, thunder rumbles again, but softer this time, as if the heavens themselves are content to listen. By the end of the night, you've learned a few things. Ambrosia really does sing if left unattended. Hera's perfection is its own kind of worship, and Eris never truly leaves without planting one seed of future chaos. You notice as you help clear the table that one of the golden goblets glows faintly. Not gold, but apple-shaped light. You decide not to mention it. Tomorrow's myths can worry about themselves.
Morning comes late to Olympus, the kind of late that mortals would call eternal. The clouds are still tinted gold from the afterglow of Dionysus's wine fountain, and the marble floor feels faintly warm beneath your sandals. You think the worst is over, that last night's drama has settled into legend. You are, of course, wrong. Because this morning begins with a rumor about Aphrodite's RSVP and the +1 that nobody approved of. You first hear it while carrying a tray of still glowing fruit through the Hall of Echoes. Two nymphs whisper nearby, their voices like rippling water. "She's bringing him," one hisses. "Him!" The other gasps. "But Hera banned—" "Exactly. That's why she's doing it." You slow your steps. The tray hums faintly, sensing gossip, as all divine food does. Who could possibly cause such panic among immortals? Then Hermes appears, sliding into your path as if he's been listening to your thoughts. "I didn't hear it from me," he says, "but Aphrodite might be bringing a mortal." You blink. "A mortal? To this party?" Hermes grins. "Technically a demigod, but the line between the two is blurrier than Zeus's marriage vows." You raise an eyebrow. "So, not approved?" "Not remotely," Hermes says cheerfully. "Hera hates surprises, especially attractive ones."
You glance toward the banquet courtyard, where the goddess of love herself is currently inspecting flowers that seem to rearrange themselves under her gaze. Aphrodite's every movement is calculated chaos. Her laughter, her sigh, even the way her hair glints like sunlight caught in a mirror. "Who is he?" you ask, lowering your voice. Hermes leans in. "Adonis." Of course, the name alone carries its own thunder. The man so beautiful, even statues felt insecure. The mortal whose death, or maybe not quite death depending on which historian you ask, caused wars of poetry and perfume. But isn't he, Hermes winks, complicated? Don't overthink divine romance. It's like mortal romance, but with more thunderbolts and fewer apologies. You sigh, "And I'm supposed to spy," Hermes says, as if it's obvious. "See if the rumors are true.
Hera asked for confirmation. You stare at him. You want me to spy on Aphrodite? He shrugs. Better you than me. She actually likes mortals. Sometimes too much. So that's how you find yourself sneaking through clouds perfumed with roses, trailing a goddess whose sandals leave faint traces of laughter in the air.
Aphrodite hums softly, rearranging a garland. "You can come out," she says without turning. You freeze. "I could smell Hermes' perfume from half a mile away," she adds. "Vanity and fear." You step forward sheepishly. "I wasn't spying," she says, amused. "Darling, everyone spies on me. It's how Olympus stays entertained." She turns, eyes like calm seas hiding storms. "You want to know about my guest." You nod. Her smile deepens. "Adonis deserves to be remembered, don't you think? Even gods need stories that hurt a little." She gestures, and an image flickers in the air. A memory, maybe. Adonis in sunlight, his laughter echoing across a mortal field. There's beauty, yes, but also fragility. You realize suddenly that gods envy that fragility. It makes mortals shine brighter. Historians still argue whether he ever truly died, whether I resurrected him, or whether mortals invented that part because they needed hope. You swallow. "Did you?" Aphrodite tilts her head. "Does it matter? He's alive when I remember him." There's a kind of pain in her tone that doesn't sound divine at all.
Then, as if flipping a switch, she brightens. But Hera hates sentimentality, so I'll call it fashion, a mortal accessory, very in this century. You wince. You're really going to bring him? "Oh, yes," she says, arranging her hair in the reflection of her own light. "The party could use some beauty that isn't made of lightning or ego." That's when Hera arrives. Her footsteps echo like judgment. You feel the temperature drop several divine degrees. "Aphrodite," she says coolly. "A word." Aphrodite doesn't flinch. "Of course, my queen. Shall we discuss decor?" "Your guest list," Hera corrects. I smile, too sweetly. "Oh, you mean Adonis. You've heard the gossip. Isn't Olympus efficient?" Hera's expression doesn't change. "He is mortal." "Half," Aphrodite says, "and prettier than most full gods. This is a dinner of immortals." "And yet," Aphrodite says softly, "we keep inviting mortals into our myths. Perhaps it's tradition." The silence that follows could slice marble. You can almost see Hera's thoughts. She doesn't want a scandal. Not tonight. Not when the whole point of the feast is divine unity. But forbidding Aphrodite would mean public drama. And Olympus loves drama even more than worship.
Finally, Hera sighs. "Fine, but he sits at the far end of the table." Aphrodite curtsies deeply. "As you wish, my radiant hostess." Then, as Hera turns away, Aphrodite adds under her breath, "I'll make sure he glows enough to be seen from both ends." You pretend you didn't hear that. You're pretty sure pretending is a survival skill here. Later, you catch sight of Adonis arriving, radiant, mortal, disarmingly human. Every god turns to look, even those who swear they don't care. Hera notices, too. She hides it well, but you can sense the irritation humming beneath her perfection. Dionysus, of course, raises his goblet. "To new faces, preferably symmetrical ones." Aphrodite beams. Adonis smiles shyly. The night, impossibly, grows even more dazzling.
But there's something else. A faint hum in the air. You notice it when Adonis walks past a certain corner of the hall, where the light flickers oddly. You glance closer and swear for half a second you see the golden apple, the one Hera vanished, reflecting in his eyes. You blink. It's gone. Coincidence, maybe. Or maybe chaos doesn't vanish. It just changes shape. You look back at Aphrodite. She meets your gaze, her smile knowing. "You mortals," she murmurs, "always think beauty is harmless." And somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbles again, the kind that sounds like the sky clearing its throat before something memorable happens.
If Olympus had a sound check, it would probably last forever, and unfortunately for you, today it does. You're standing in what might generously be called the Music Pavilion, though it's really just a cloud suspended between two mountains, packed with instruments that play themselves when no one's looking. Apollo paces nearby, radiant and restless, running his hands over a golden lyre strung with hair that allegedly belonged to the Muses. Historians still argue whether that's metaphorical or disturbingly literal. Music, he says grandly, is the soul of order. Without it, this banquet will descend into noise and anarchy. Behind him, one of the satyrs is attempting to tune a flute and accidentally summoning a mild earthquake. You say, "I think we might already be there." Apollo ignores you. "This piece," he continues, holding his lyre aloft, "was composed to honor harmony itself. The mortals call it lyrical perfection." You squint at the sheet music. That's upside down. He frowns. It's abstract. The rehearsal begins, or more accurately, the divine equivalent of sound-based chaos begins. Each muse wants to conduct. Each nymph claims perfect pitch. Hermes arrives halfway through and insists on adding percussion by drumming on Zeus's spare thunderbolts.
The first strum of Apollo's lyre sends a ripple through the clouds. Birds forget how to fly. Somewhere below, mortals probably assume there's a storm. The second note cracks a goblet in Hera's hand down in the hall, and she raises one perfect eyebrow in slow, divine warning. You suggest, as gently as possible, "Maybe turn it down?" Apollo blinks. "Down? Yes, less divine, more dinner-friendly." He looks scandalized. Art cannot be less. Then, to prove his point, he plays harder. The sky hums. The sun itself seems to wobble slightly in its course. You swear you can hear Athena shouting from 3 halls away. "Tell him to modulate before he breaks geometry!" You clap your hands over your ears. "Apollo!" you yell. "You're going to deafen the muses!" "They're immortal," he shouts back. "They can handle a little enlightenment." Behind him, one muse faints gracefully into a pile of harps. At this point, Dionysus arrives, looking like a walking hangover cure. "Why is the air vibrating like it owes Apollo money?" he asks. "Rehearsal," you say weakly. Dionysus sighs and claps twice. Instantly, every wine goblet within a mile refills itself. He says, "Carry on, but louder than this, and I'll drown you out with interpretive dance."
Apollo smirks. "Please, you couldn't even keep rhythm during the Trojan celebrations." Dionysus raises his cup. "At least my music makes people happy." Apollo plucks another shimmering note. "Mine makes them immortal. Mine makes them forget you exist." And just like that, the rehearsal turns into an impromptu duet/duel. One god strumming perfection, the other summoning drums from nowhere. The muses, sensing chaos and potential drama, form a chorus line. Tambourine joins in. The result sounds like a celestial jazz band having an existential crisis. You can't decide whether to dance or run. Halfway through, Apollo's lyre gives a sudden high-pitched shriek, a string snapping, ringing through Olympus like an insult. The air shivers. For a moment, everything stops. Even Dionysus looks impressed. That, Apollo declares, holding the broken lyre dramatically, was intentional. Sounded like feedback, you mumble. Feedback? He repeats, unfamiliar with the mortal term. You explain, it's when sound turns against itself. Apollo brightens instantly. Ah, like self-awareness. Brilliant. You sigh. That's one way to put it. He plucks the remaining strings experimentally. The broken one twangs in protest, resonating oddly. And suddenly, from somewhere deep in the clouds, comes a faint echo. Not a normal one, a melodic one. The echo repeats his note, but off, like an answering voice, sly and uninvited.
Apollo stiffens. Who dares mimic me? No one answers. The air vibrates again. The echo shifts into a strange minor key. Hermes frowns. That's not us. Dionysus grins. Maybe it's the gods of feedback. There are no such gods, Apollo snaps. Not yet, Dionysus says. But I like where this is going. The strange echo grows louder. The clouds flicker. Then, sudden silence. Everyone looks at Apollo. He lowers the lyre slowly, then mutters, "Perhaps we overdid it." A soft cough interrupts the tension. It's you. So, what's plan B? He looks baffled. There is no plan B. There is only refinement. He gestures, and the lyre heals itself, threads of light reweaving across its frame. The banquet will have perfection or nothing. Can we vote for nothing? Dionysus asks. Apollo ignores him. The banquet will have perfection or nothing. Mortals write poems about my music. It raises them above themselves, or puts them to sleep, Hermes mutters. Useful, actually. Maybe that's why Hera invited you. Silence, messenger, Apollo snaps, and a faint golden glow surrounds him. Not anger, precisely, but pride burning like incense. You realize then that the gods don't rehearse for performance. They rehearse for identity. Each note is a reaffirmation. I exist. I am divine. And the world listens because it must.
The thought feels strangely human. When the rehearsal ends, the clouds are trembling, the instruments are faintly smoking, and your ears are ringing with what might be enlightenment or tinnitus. Apollo nods approvingly. Perfect. You look around at the scattered muses, the half-melted harp strings, and a faint smell of ozone. Sure, you say. Perfect. Historians, Apollo says, will remember this as the moment divine music evolved. Hermes smirks. Historians will call it noise pollution. Apollo turns away, glowing with offended dignity. They'll thank me later. As he leaves, Dionysus slings an arm over your shoulders. Next time, he says, I'm bringing drums. At least chaos has rhythm. You nod, still dizzy from the sonic storm. Somewhere below, mortals are probably composing myths to explain the strange vibrations in the sky. Thunder, prophecy, divine argument. You almost laugh. If only they knew. You glance toward the main hall where Hera's voice echoes faintly, commanding, calm, preparing for the evening's grand entrance. The rehearsal may have ended,
but the true performance hasn't even begun. You stretch, rubbing your ears. At least it can't get louder, you murmur. Behind you, a trumpet made of lightning ignites itself and blares experimentally. You close your eyes. I had to say it. There's a kind of tension that hums through Olympus, like static before a thunderstorm. You can't see it, but your skin feels it. And right now, as dusk settles in like spilled gold across the clouds, that tension has a name. Zeus just found the guest list. You're in the Grand Hall, which currently resembles a diplomatic battlefield disguised as a dining room. Crystal goblets hover midair, shimmering in anticipation. The long divine table gleams with impossible symmetry. Hera stands near the entrance, rehearsing the smile of a queen who knows every secret but forgives none. Everything looks perfect, until you hear Zeus roar from somewhere down the corridor. Who invited them? You freeze. The sound is distant, but heavy, like a mountain remembering it's a volcano. Hera exhales through her nose. "Ah," she says, almost to herself. He's found the scroll. A moment later, Zeus storms in, clutching the gold-inlaid invitation list like it personally offended him. His aura crackles faintly, lightning flickering through his beard. "Hera," he booms, "explain this." You subtly take 2 steps backward. Hera turns, perfectly composed. "Explain what, dearest?" He waves the scroll. "You invited Mnemosyne." "The tightness of memory," she says smoothly. "Yes, why wouldn't I?" "Because she—" He pauses, remembering his audience. "Because that woman has a history of bringing up history." You suppress a snort. Hera catches it, her eyes flicking to you briefly, a warning wrapped in amusement.
Zeus continues pacing. "And the fates? Why are they on the list? They knit doom, Hera. Doom isn't dinner conversation." "They also knit," Hera says mildly. "The table runners are exquisite." "They predict things," he growls. "I prefer surprises." You whisper, "Like your marriages?" and immediately regret it. Lightning flares. Hera, without looking at you, says softly, "Run." You do. From the corridor, you still hear them arguing, not with fury, but with the strange rhythm of immortals who have been disagreeing since time invented disagreement. "Zeus," Hera says, calm but sharp, "this is a celebration of divine unity. Excluding the Titans would be hypocritical. They tried to overthrow us. So did you, technically," she reminds him. There's a long pause, followed by the unmistakable sound of divine sulking. When you return, cautiously, Hera is standing alone, her expression flawless once more. Zeus is gone, or rather, storming elsewhere to make the sky nervous. "Is it handled?" you ask. "For now," she says, "he'll return. He always does. Gods are like storms, loud departures, predictable returns." You nod. "And the Titans?" "They'll come," Hera says, looking toward the horizon. "They always do when they're told not to." You think she sounds almost resigned. Later that evening, as you help adjust celestial drapes, which for reasons unknown keep trying to drift into the stars, you overhear Athena and Hermes whispering near a marble column.
"He's fuming," Athena says quietly. "You'd think Hera served him humility for dessert." Hermes chuckles. "That would be a first." Athena glances toward the throne dais. "He's worried she's making alliances. With Titans or with mortals?" Athena shrugs. "Whichever irritates him more." You pretend not to hear, but you file it away, partly because it's fascinating, partly because you might need to dodge thunder later. Then Zeus returns. The entire hall brightens by sheer proximity to his ego. He looks composed again, though the faint static in the air betrays the effort. Hera greets him with a flawless smile. "Dearest," she says, "you look radiant." "I am radiant," he mutters, but sits down anyway. You notice the subtle chessboard forming, not a literal one, but a game of glances and silences. Hera's dinner party isn't just a feast, it's a peace treaty in disguise. You begin to suspect that every guest has been invited not for company, but for strategy. Zeus lifts his goblet. He says carefully that all the gods have arrived. "Almost," Hera replies. His eyes narrow. "Almost? You wish you were anywhere else."
She turns gracefully. "We're awaiting Prometheus." The name lands like a lightning bolt that forgot to explode. "Prometheus," Zeus repeats. "The thief of fire, the insolent spark spreader. Technically," Hera says, "he also invented foresight." "Technically," Zeus growls, "he's chained to a rock." Hera smiles faintly. "Not tonight." The room holds its breath. Even the muses stop humming. You realize suddenly, this isn't about forgiveness or hospitality. It's theater, the kind that only immortals can stage, where every act is a reminder of power, mercy, and control. Hera isn't inviting enemies to reconcile. She's inviting them to witness her authority. Still, it's brave, or foolish, to summon old rebellion into polite company. Zeus leans back, thunder rumbling softly in his chest. "If he comes, he eats last. If he comes, he eats free." The words hang there perfectly balanced between grace and provocation. Later, as you light floating candles that orbit the table like lazy comets, you catch Hera alone by a window. She's staring at the horizon again, the one mortals never see, where the sky fades into memory. You ask quietly, "Why invite him?" She doesn't answer immediately. Finally, she says, "Because unity isn't peace if it's convenient." You frown. "That sounds philosophical." "Practical," she corrects. "If I don't invite him, Zeus looks like fear. If I do, he looks like forgiveness."
You can't help admiring the strategy. "So everyone wins?" "No," she says softly, "but everyone believes they did. That's enough." You think about that as you help arrange ambrosia platters and refill Dionysus's seemingly bottomless goblet. Olympus hums with expectation. The air is thick with perfume and prophecy. Then Hermes bursts in, slightly out of breath, his sandals smoking faintly. "They're here," he says. "Who?" Hera asks, though you can already guess. Hermes gulps. "The Titans." Hera's smile doesn't falter. "Excellent! Show them in." From somewhere outside, thunder grumbles again. Not Zeus's this time, but the ancient, deeper kind that sounds like the earth remembering its oldest arguments. You exhale slowly. So much for boring history.
The gates of Olympus open with a sound like mountains breathing. The air bends, heavy and slow, as figures older than memory begin to climb the marble steps. You feel it before you see them, a gravitational pull, as though time itself has chosen to walk upright again. The Titans arrive. They don't glow the way the Olympians do. Their presence is subtler, deeper. You don't see light, you feel weight. Cronus leads, tall and expressionless, his eyes dark with something that isn't age so much as consequence. Behind him come Mnemosyne, Themis, Hyperion, and the twin shadows of Oceanus and Tethys. Each carries themselves not as guests, but as relics that refuse to die. The Olympians, radiant, restless, and infinitely younger, watch them enter. For a long moment, neither side moves. You glance between them. It's like watching a mirror decide which reflection is truer. Finally, Hera breaks the silence. Her tone is poised, her voice steady. "Welcome, ancient kin," she says. "We are honored by your presence." Cronus tilts his head slightly. His voice, when it comes, is a rumble that seems to travel through stone rather than air. "Are you?" Zeus shifts beside her, lightning twitching in his fingers. "You're bold to come," he says. Cronus's lip curves, not quite a smile. "You're bold to invite." It's not a threat, not exactly, more a reminder that peace has a memory.
Hera gestures gracefully. "Let the feast begin. We have much to share and more to remember." Servants move quickly, setting goblets and platters before gods who could level empires if bored. You, meanwhile, find yourself caught between fascination and terror, mostly terror. You carry a bowl of ambrosia to the head table, hands trembling slightly. Hera nods approvingly. Zeus, however, doesn't seem to notice you. His focus is entirely on his father. Cronus notices. He always does. "Do you still dream, my son?" Cronus asks, almost conversationally. Zeus frowns. "Of what?" "Of hunger," says Cronus. The room goes still. Even Ares, usually thrilled by tension, looks uneasy. Hera's eyes narrow, but her tone remains polite. "Let us not spoil the evening with talk of appetites." Cronus turns to her. "On the contrary, Queen of Olympus, appetite built this mountain." There's a murmur of unease among the lesser gods. Hermes quietly moves closer to Dionysus, whispering something about having an escape route ready. You hover near the wall, pretending to rearrange a vase of immortal lilies while eavesdropping shamelessly. Mnemosyne, serene, statuesque, her voice carrying a gentle sadness, speaks next. "Memory," she says softly, "isn't meant to wound, it's meant to remind." Zeus leans forward. "Then remind us," he says. "Why did you follow him?" She meets his gaze. "Because he built what you inherited." It's not anger, not defiance, just fact. The kind of fact gods hate most. For a moment, no one speaks. You think maybe this was all a mistake, that the table might split apart from the sheer tension of divine pride. But then Hera lifts her goblet and says, "Let us remember then, not as rulers and rebels, but as witnesses of time. The world endures because we stopped devouring it."
You exhale slowly. The words hang like a spell. Even Zeus doesn't interrupt. One by one, the guests raise their goblets. Ambrosia gleams like liquid sunlight. The toast is made, tentative but binding. When you sit again, the hall seems softer, not friendly, but less sharp. Music drifts through the air, gentle and slow, played by unseen hands. The muses begin to hum again. Even the titans seem to relax slightly, though relaxed for them means merely less apocalyptic. You take a moment to observe them up close. Cronus, stillness carved from inevitability. Mnemosyne, memory shaped into mercy.
Themis, eyes blindfolded not by ignorance but by choice, the weight of fairness pressing against her shoulders. Hyperion, the forgotten sun, his presence faint but warm, like the echo of dawn. They are myth made flesh, and you, a mortal attendant, can only wonder how it feels to be history's author and its prisoner at once. Then, unexpectedly, Prometheus enters. No guards, no chains, just the quiet defiance of someone who survived his punishment and decided to walk back into the fire. Every eye turns to him. Zeus's expression is thunder. Hera's is triumph. Prometheus bows slightly. You set quite a table. Hera smiles. You taught us to use the fire after all. He chuckles. And you used it well. Zeus's voice is cold enough to frost marble. You were not invited. Prometheus glances at Hera. Apparently, I was. Only for one night, she says. Peace is a guest, not a resident. Prometheus nods slowly. I'll take it.
He takes a seat, not at the head table, but near the lower end, beside Hestia, who quietly offers him bread. The simplicity of the gesture cuts deeper than any speech. The rest of the feast unfolds like a storm that refuses to rain. Words are careful, laughter rehearsed, but you sense something shifting underneath it all, a delicate recalibration of divine politics. Hera doesn't speak much now. She doesn't need to. Her point has already been made. Olympus can host its ghosts and still stand. Zeus remains outwardly calm, but every flash of lightning outside seems to echo his pulse. At one point, Hermes leans toward you and whispers, "You know what this means, right?" You shake your head. "It means," he says, "that the queen just reminded the king that forgiveness is power." You glance at Hera. Her eyes meet yours across the table, steady and knowing. And for a moment you realize you're watching the real myth unfold, not the kind mortals tell in temples, but the quiet one that sustains eternity, the negotiation between pride and peace. Outside, thunder mutters in the clouds, like applause withheld. Inside, the feast continues.
Dinner is predictably late, even by immortal standards. You're on your fourth lap around the hall with an amphora of something labeled nectar, vintage, before rivers existed, when Hera finally rises and claps her hands once. The sound echoes like a crystal bell struck inside your skull. Instantly, the chatter drops to a polite hush. "Let it be served," she declares. The words ripple through the air like command lines in divine code. Platters appear, not by mortal hands, but by shimmering illusion, borne by invisible servants who smell faintly of ozone and burnt honey. You blink. The table seems endless now, stretching farther than it should. There's ambrosia shimmering like molten moonlight, fruits carved from solid starlight, and breads that steam with the scent of summer rain. Somewhere, a roast peacock turns itself slowly on a spit of lightning. You can't tell if it's alive or just deeply committed to the performance. Zeus lifts an eyebrow at Hera. "You've outdone yourself." "I usually do," she says, without turning to look at him. The gods take their seats in a hesitant, rustling ballet,
fabrics glimmering, armor clinking, egos settling. You hover at the edge of the grand table, too nervous to eat, but too mesmerized to move.
Hera sits tall at the head, posture perfect, voice calm. She motions for the first toast. "To the continuation of Olympus," she says, "and the delicate miracle of restraint." It's not clear whether that last part is meant as a compliment or a warning. Zeus chuckles, lightning flashing faintly behind his teeth. To Hera, then, patron saint of impossible expectations. The table laughs, but there's an edge to it. You can feel the tension sparkling in the air like static before a storm. You glance toward Dionysus, who's been in charge of beverages since, well, forever. He's reclined on a floating couch, half listening, half wrestling with a jug that keeps refilling itself. He waves lazily at you. "Pour for the mortals, too, eh?" You hesitate. "I'm technically mortal, yes." "Exactly," he says, grinning. "You'll make the best test subject." You pour a few drops of nectar into your goblet. It glows faintly, fizzing with the sound of distant applause. You take a cautious sip.
It tastes like sunshine that forgot how to hurry. Your eyelids flutter. For a moment, you see everything. The geometry of clouds, the whisper of oceans, the faint heartbeat of the world below. And then it fades, leaving behind a slightly burnt aftertaste and the suspicion that you'll never crave mortal coffee again. Across the table, Poseidon is complaining about the seafood. "It's offensive," he mutters. "Who decided squid was appropriate? They're my subjects." "Relax," says Ares. "You've eaten mortals who built you temples." "That's different," Poseidon growls. "They volunteered through poor navigation." Laughter ripples again. The conversation drifts, chaotic but glittering. Gossip among gods. Apollo is bragging about a new hymn that allegedly cures heartbreak. Artemis rolls her eyes and claims it just makes deer cry. Hermes has started a side hustle selling counterfeit constellations to unsuspecting demigods. Even Hades, yes, Hades is here now, sitting quietly in the corner, sipping black wine and pretending he isn't amused. You notice Hera watching it all with faint satisfaction. For all her meticulous planning, this chaos is exactly what she wanted. A gathering of beings too proud to agree and too curious to leave. You lean closer to her, curious enough to whisper, "Does it feel strange, hosting everyone who's ever defied you?" She glances at you, her smile thin and thoughtful. "Strange? No. Necessary." Historians still argue whether that was the night Olympus truly became united, not by love, but by etiquette. You pass around more platters, careful not to trip on your own awe. A goddess whose name you forget asks for seconds. A satyr sneaks under the table with a tray of figs. Somewhere near the back, the muses harmonize over who gets credit for inventing music.
And then, halfway through the meal, Hera stands again. Her voice softens, but the room obeys instantly. "We feast," she says, "to celebrate creation. But what is creation if not conversation?" Zeus rolls his eyes just slightly. "You've been reading philosophers again." She ignores him. "So let us share. One memory each. A story of what we've built, broken, or forgiven." Groans ripple through the crowd. Immortals, it turns out, fear public speaking as much as mortals do. Hestia volunteers first, her story quiet, of a mortal hearth she once protected through 3 generations. The warmth in her words makes even Ares stop clanking his cup. Then Dionysus takes a turn.
recounting a time he invented wine accidentally by forgetting to clean a cauldron. "It was art," he says, "born of laziness." Laughter follows. Next, Athena shares a fragment of strategy from the Trojan War, though she admits, wryly, that humans rarely learn. "They keep mistaking wisdom for good timing," she sighs. "You listen, entranced. The myths you grew up hearing sound different when told around a dinner table, softened by fatigue and nostalgia." Even Zeus speaks eventually, though only after Hera's expectant silence makes him. He tells of the first thunderbolt, how it was forged not from rage, but from fear. He says, "I was afraid the silence would win." The admission stuns the room. Then, slowly, applause.
You glance at Hera. Her expression doesn't change, but her eyes soften. For once, she looks at Zeus not as a rival, but as something older, something familiar. The courses continue: celestial fruits, honeyed grains, roasted phoenix, ethically sourced, allegedly. Between bites, laughter blooms again. You notice the Titans have begun to talk with the Olympians, stiffly but sincerely. Even Prometheus smiles when Hermes offers him a seat in the next trade scheme. You realize you're witnessing something extraordinary, a mythic détente disguised as dinner. And through it all, Hera maintains her effortless poise, her empire of etiquette. You suspect she could host a hurricane and still ensure everyone had matching napkins. By the time dessert arrives, an enormous crystal sphere of frozen starlight that tastes vaguely like nostalgia. Even the thunder has gone quiet outside. You lean back, dizzy with nectar and diplomacy. Hera raises her goblet once more. "To conversation," she says softly. "May it always come before lightning." And for a brief, shimmering instant, you believe it will.
The first few bites of dessert have barely melted on your tongue before the mood at the table starts to shift again. You can feel it in the air, the hush between laughter, the subtle turn of a phrase, the way old rivalries start to stretch and yawn awake after being lulled by wine and sentiment. The conversation, that fragile bridge Hera built between Titans and Olympians, begins to sway. A mortal somewhere down the table, a poet who somehow got invited, still clutching a lyre he can't quite tune, mentions, perhaps too proudly, that humanity is finally learning to live without the gods. You can almost hear the lightning crackle in Zeus's throat before he swallows it. "Oh," he says, "without us?" The mortal, brave or foolish, probably both, nods. "We tell your stories, but we don't need your miracles." Aphrodite gasps. Ares looks delighted. Athena looks interested. Hera's eyes sharpen like glass catching sunlight. She doesn't interrupt, not yet. She just lets the words ripple across the table like a stone tossed into divine stillness. "Humans are evolving," the poet continues, warming to his own danger. "We build temples to ideas now, to democracy, to logic, to love itself." Hermes leans toward you and whispers, "You think he's suicidal or just networking?" You try not to snort into your goblet.
Across from you, Dionysus grins. "So, you've replaced worship with bureaucracy and heartbreak. Excellent trade." The poet hesitates. "We've learned from you." "Learned." Athena's tone is almost kind, but her smile isn't. "You mean imitated badly." A small ripple of laughter follows, but the tension doesn't ease. It's Hera who finally intervenes, her voice calm, but undeniably commanding. "Let him finish." The mortal bows his head slightly. "We remember you in art, in stories,
in lessons, but we've learned to question. Isn't that what you wanted? Silence. Thick, resonant, ancient. Zeus looks like he might smite the concept of questions entirely. Poseidon's trident hums under the table. Even Hades seems amused, swirling his black wine and murmuring, "Bold little creature." Historians still argue whether this was the first philosophical debate between gods and mortals, or just the most awkward dinner conversation in cosmic history. Hera leans back in her chair, eyes thoughtful. "Mortals," she says slowly, "were made to outgrow us. The question is whether they can do it gracefully." You feel something loosen in the room. Zeus looks at her, puzzled. "Are you defending them?" "I'm observing them," she replies. "You should try it sometime." There's a flicker of amusement from Hestia. "You sound almost proud." "I am," Hera says. "They fight, fail, and still gather around tables. That's divinity enough." Her words ripple through the hall like quiet thunder.
But then, predictably, Ares ruins it. "They're soft," he says, mouthful of celestial poultry. "No battles, no sacrifices. Where's the fun?" Athena's eyes narrow. "Fun? You mistake meaning for violence again." "Oh, forgive me," Ares says, "for thinking passion should do something." The table's tone starts to rise. You instinctively edge away from the center, clutching your goblet like a shield. Dionysus, bless him, tries to lighten the mood. "Come now," he says, "mortals are useful. They make music, drama, and hangovers." The muses nod enthusiastically. "And gossip," says Calliope. "Gossip isn't an art," says Apollo. "Tell that to the poets," Hermes mutters. It's chaos again, not the violent kind, but the conversational kind that sounds suspiciously like a family argument disguised as philosophy. You can almost see the patterns in it, Athena and Ares locked in their eternal dialectic of thought versus impulse, Zeus and Hera circling each other in rhetorical orbits, Hades quietly winning the argument by never joining it, and you, poor mortal attendant, sitting in the middle of it all, pretending to refill cups while history decides whether to applaud or combust. Then Hera lifts her hand, just that, one hand. Silence returns like obedience itself has a heartbeat. "Mortals," she says softly, "reflect us. We may not like what we see, but that's not their fault." She glances toward the poet. "You build temples to ideas because you no longer fear gods. That is progress." Zeus snorts, "Until they forget who gave them the fire." Prometheus chuckles under his breath, "You're welcome." Hera's eyes flick to him, not angry, almost grateful. "And who gave them curiosity, which burns longer."
Hestia hums softly, an old melody that sounds like the warmth of home. Even Ares looks contemplative, which is unsettling in its own right. The poet bows deeply. "Then perhaps," he says, "we still serve a purpose." "You do," Hera replies. "You remind us what power looks like when it's uncertain." The dinner resumes in quieter tones. Conversations scatter like embers, softer, gentler. You hear Athena asking the mortal what democracy feels like. You see Apollo scribbling lyrics about mortality on a napkin of starlight. Hermes starts a betting pool on which human invention will collapse first, democracy or plumbing. It's absurd. It's beautiful. It's divine. And somewhere deep inside, you realize this is what the feast was meant to be, not celebration but reflection, a mirror held up to eternity, showing gods the faint outlines of their humanity.
As the last plates vanish and the nectar dwindles, Hera raises her goblet once more. "To the mortals," she says,
imperfect, inconvenient, but somehow necessary. The toast is met with reluctant agreement. Even Zeus clinks his cup. You drink too, though your hand trembles slightly. The nectar burns, but in the kind of way that feels like understanding. You set the cup down and exhale. The stars above Olympus flicker, as if the sky itself had joined in. Somewhere, far below, a mortal poet will wake tomorrow with a story no one believes about a dinner where gods debated humanity and found themselves reflected in every word. And you'll remember the silence that followed Hera's toast, that soft, infinite stillness of a world briefly in balance.
It begins with a sound so small you almost miss it, a faint, wet plop. You glance down, expecting maybe a stray grape. But no, what hits the floor is far more tragic. A single droplet of missing wine. Dionysus notices instantly. His divine senses twitch like a cat hearing a can opener. His goblet freezes halfway to his lips. "Wait," he says slowly, "where's the fountain?" Everyone looks up. The great centerpiece of the table, a crystal spire that's been overflowing all night with the vintage of eternity, stands silent, dry. The last trickle of ambrosial nectar fades into a lonely shimmer. Gasps ripple down the table. "No," whispers Aphrodite horrified, "not the creation year blend." "Did someone drink it all?" Ares bellows. "Because if they did, I'll find them and congratulate them. Because honestly, that's impressive." Hera presses her temples. "Not again." You, the mortal, have no idea what that means, but judging by Apollo's expression, it wasn't good. Dionysus leaps up, toga swirling like a flag of chaos. "Nobody move," he commands. "This is a sacred emergency."
He grabs a ladle the size of a harp and peers into the empty basin. His brow furrows. It's gone, all of it. The vintage, the spirit, he sniffs dramatically, essence of joy. You lean over cautiously. Maybe it evaporated? The look he gives you could curdle milk. "Wine does not evaporate," he says. "It elopes." Hermes snorts. "And I suppose we're witnesses to the wedding?" Dionysus glares. "Mock all you like, messenger boy, but this is sabotage." Now everyone's talking at once, suspicion and ego fizzing like unstable chemistry. Ares blames Apollo, Apollo blames Hermes, Hermes blames gravity, and Zeus threatens to turn this dinner into a disciplinary hearing. Meanwhile, you and Hestia exchange glances of shared exhaustion, the universal look of those who know they'll be cleaning this up later. Hera claps once, silencing the storm. "Enough," she says. "We'll find it, quietly." Dionysus nods gravely. "Right, quietly." 5 seconds later, he's on top of the table, yelling, "Form search teams." You are drafted into Team 3, led by Hermes and composed mostly of minor nymphs with clipboards. Your mission? Locate the missing fountain before the gods declare war on each other again.
You trail after Hermes through the golden corridors of Olympus. He's muttering under his breath about amateur thieves. "No respect for good fermentation," he says. "Steal lightning? Fine. Fire? Sure. But wine? That's barbaric." As you pass the kitchen, you notice something odd.
a faint trail of glittering droplets leading out the back door into the garden. "Hermes," you whisper, pointing. He squints. The classic breadcrumb strategy, except wetter. You follow the trail together. It winds through starlit hedges, past marble statues that seem to smirk knowingly, and down toward a moonlit pond. The droplets stop there, but the air smells strangely festive. You step closer. There, in the reeds, is Pan, flute god, goat enthusiast, chaos connoisseur, lying on his back and humming drunkenly. Beside him, the fountain's golden spigot, still dripping nectar into the pond. Pan looks up lazily. "Oh, hey, mortals. Fancy seeing you here." Hermes crosses his arms. "You stole the sacred wine source?" "Borrowed," he says. "It was too crowded up there. I wanted to make my own punch bowl." You glance at the pond. Sure enough, naiads are dancing in circles, scooping handfuls of shimmering water and giggling like they've discovered caffeine.
Dionysus appears moments later, eyes wide with horror. "You watered it down? That's sacrilege!" Pan shrugs. "It's called microbrewing." Aphrodite, who has followed the commotion, sighs dramatically. "At least it's sparkling." Hera arrives last, expression somewhere between fury and fascination. She looks at the glowing pond, at the laughing naiads, and then at Dionysus, who is halfway to tears. Finally, she says, "You know what? Leave it." Dionysus spins to her. "Leave it?" She nods. "Perhaps Olympus needs a lighter vintage tonight. Something diluted." "Blasphemy," mutters Dionysus. "Perspective," she corrects. There's a pause. Then, to everyone's surprise, Zeus bursts out laughing. The sound rolls through the garden like thunder that forgot to threaten anyone. "Let it be, then," he says. "The gods can drink humility for once." You swear the stars flicker in amusement.
And so, for the first time in recorded mythology, the feast continues not around a grand fountain, but beside a moonlit pond filled with divine punch. The gods dip goblets into the glowing water, laughing freely now, not the forced laughter of pride, but the real kind, rough-edged and human. Even Dionysus, sulking at first, gives in. "Fine," he grumbles, "but I'm calling it Pan's poor choice reserve." Historians still argue whether this marked the beginning of the first festival of misrule, or simply the moment Olympus discovered happy accidents. You sit on a marble step, watching as Hera reclines beside Zeus, not quite close, not quite distant. The air hums with music and moonlight. The gods, for once, look ordinary, full, tired, content. You raise your cup, now half pond water, half starlight, and whisper, "To lost wine and found laughter." And somewhere in the night, Hera smiles faintly, as if she heard. "The feast drifts into something softer, less celebration, more exhale." You find yourself walking away from the pond, cup in hand, letting the sound of divine laughter fade behind you like a song winding down. Olympus at night is a strange thing. By day, it's dazzling, all white marble and gold fire, but under the moon, it feels almost human. Shadows stretch across the columns, ivy curls around statues with something like tenderness. You wander down a colonnade lined with torches burning blue and smell the faint sweetness of pomegranates. Somewhere nearby, a harp
plays on its own, plucking notes that sound like sighs. You wonder if the instrument's lonely. Then you hear footsteps, soft ones, careful ones. You turn and see Hera, walking alone. Her crown glows faintly, not blinding like Zeus's lightning, but warm, steady, like a candle that refuses to go out. For a moment, she doesn't see you. Her gaze is distant, fixed somewhere between memory and exhaustion. When she finally notices you, she blinks, then smiles just slightly, as if recognizing a quiet guest who's managed to survive the entire evening. "Still awake?" she asks. Her voice is low, smooth, the kind of calm that carries weight, not ease. You nod. "It's quieter out here." She looks toward the distant feast. "They'll drink until dawn, then complain about headaches and lost sandals." You laugh softly. "And you?" Her eyes flick to you, amused. "I never lose mine."
There's a pause. You take a sip from your cup. The watered-down nectar still shimmers faintly, like stars trying to dissolve. "Do you ever tire of it?" you ask before thinking. "The feasts, the rituals, the pretending everything's perfect." For a long moment, she doesn't answer. Then she turns away, tracing her fingers along a marble pillar. "Every day," she says quietly, "but I am the one who must never admit it." You wait. The night seems to lean closer, listening. Hera continues, almost to herself. "They call me jealous, vindictive, the scorned queen. But jealousy, mortal, it's just another name for wanting to matter." You want to reply, but the weight of her words steals your voice. She smiles faintly, almost apologetically. "Do not mistake me. I chose this, the crown, the thunder, the endless ceremony, but even gods forget how to rest." She looks up at the moon, and for an instant, she isn't a goddess. She's a woman, tired, luminous, magnificent in her weariness. "You mortals," she says after a pause, "you have it hard, but at least you can stop. We never stop. We endure until we become stories." You nod slowly. "And then?" She tilts her head. "Then people forget that we once breathed." A breeze passes through, stirring her veil. Somewhere in the distance, someone, probably Pan, has shouted that he's invented liquid harmony again. Hera sighs, then laughs under her breath.
"You should go rest," she says gently. "Dream while you still can. The world is cruel, but sleep is kind." You hesitate. "And you?" Her gaze softens. "I'll watch the dawn come in. Someone has to greet the light." She turns to leave, but stops, looks back over her shoulder, and adds, "Tell the others we are not as far from you as you think." Then she walks away, footsteps fading into the colonnade, leaving behind the faint scent of wild lilies and the sound of distant thunder softening into silence. You stay there for a while, cup in hand, watching as the first faint blush of morning touches the horizon. The golden peaks of Olympus catch fire in slow motion, and for one suspended instant, everything, gods, mortals, laughter, regret, feels the same color. The pond below ripples with dawnlight, and the laughter from the night before echoes faintly, now less chaotic, more content. Maybe, you think, the world isn't held together by thunder or laws, but by small mercies. Diluted wine, late-night honesty, and the way even gods grow quiet before sunrise. And when you finally turn to leave, the harp begins to play again, this time softly, almost shyly, as if singing you back to sleep.
By the time you return to the Grand Hall, Olympus is an echo of what it was. The laughter has turned slurred. The music unravels into slow, off-key improvisations. And the once perfect banquet table now looks like a battlefield of empty chalices and wilting ambrosia petals. You can feel it, that final stage of every party, divine or mortal, when joy fades into fatigue, and even immortality starts yawning. Zeus, sprawled across his golden chair, is attempting to tell the same joke for the 5th time, but his lightning keeps interrupting him mid-punchline. Dionysus has switched from pouring wine to philosophizing about grapes having souls. Hermes, ever the multitasker, is stealing leftover figs while pretending to take minutes for historical accuracy. And at the center, Hera stands, the queen among ruins, still holding her composure like a warrior refusing to drop her shield. She clinks her spoon against a cup of celestial crystal. The sound cuts through the noise, ringing clear as frost. "My friends," she says, her voice steady, regal, a melody that hushes the chaos, "before this night dissolves completely into myth, I would like to say a few words. You sense what's coming, the grand toast, the closing act, the part where the gods pretend to have learned something. A hush falls. Even Zeus looks up, blinking blearily."
Hera lifts her cup, and the air around her glimmers faintly, not with the fierce brilliance of lightning, but with something subtler, like moonlight, remembering it used to be sunlight. "This night," she begins, "was meant to celebrate peace among us, the rare moment when Olympus could dine without thunder, jealousy, or the noise of mortal prayers." You glance around. Ares scratches his head, unsure if that's supposed to be funny. Aphrodite rolls her eyes, but doesn't interrupt. For once, everyone is listening. "And yet," Hera continues, "what did we do? We argued. We competed. We spilled wine and pride alike. We reminded ourselves why we are gods, and why, perhaps, that is both blessing and burden." The honesty in her tone surprises even you. This isn't the vengeful queen of myth. This is someone peeling back her crown just long enough to breathe. Historians still argue whether Hera actually delivered a speech that night, or if later poets embellished it. Some claim she spoke of cosmic unity. Others insist it was a veiled complaint about Zeus forgetting their anniversary again. The truth, like ambrosia, probably lies somewhere in between. But what everyone agrees on is what happened next, because just as Hera raises her cup to conclude her speech, Zeus hiccups. Not an ordinary hiccup, of course, a thunder hiccup, the kind that echoes through mountains, rattles the stars, and accidentally smites a decorative harp. The gods freeze. Hera's hand tightens around her cup. You, wisely,
The air crackles. Somewhere Poseidon mutters, "Every time." Zeus, realizing what he's done, tries to disguise it with a laugh, the kind that only makes things worse. "Just, clearing the clouds," he says weakly. "Little static in the system." Hera blinks once, twice. The silence stretches thin. And then, against all expectations, she laughs. Not the polite, queenly kind. A real laugh. Warm, rich, unstoppable. It ripples through the room, softening the divine tension like sunlight breaking through rain. Soon everyone's laughing. Even Athena chuckles into her goblet. Dionysus raises his hands and declares, "Behold, the first sacred toast gone wrong. May it never go right again." The hall erupts in applause, cheers, and faintly drunk hymns. Zeus, relieved, raises his cup too,
To Hera, the only one who could make Olympus both terrifying and beautiful. To Hera, they echo, and in that moment, for all their chaos and cosmic flaws, the gods look almost human. Sip your last bit of nectar. It's gone flat and warm, but somehow comforting, and glance toward Hera. She catches your eye across the room and gives a small, knowing nod, the kind that says, yes, this is absurd, but it's ours. Outside, the night begins to fade at the edges. The stars look tired, their shine dimming as dawn sneaks in from the east. Someone, probably Hermes, has fallen asleep face first in a plate of golden figs. The harp, miraculously repaired, plays one lazy chord, the universal signal that the evening is officially over. You lean back against a pillar, letting your eyes blur in the dimming glow. The laughter grows fainter, replaced by the soft hum of morning wind. Some say the first divine dinner party ended in glorious chaos. Others say it ended in quiet grace. You were there, though, and you know it ended in something rarer than either: contentment. The gods had feasted, fought, forgiven, and made fools of themselves, and somehow that felt exactly right. Hera's voice lingers one last time, echoing like silk. Even perfection needs a little imperfection to taste alive. The torches dim, the clouds settle, and Olympus sighs into sleep. You take one final look at the Queen of Heaven, her crown slightly askew, her smile faint but real, and think, maybe even gods need goodnight stories too.
By the time the first sunbeam cuts through the mist, Olympus has fallen into the strange hush of the morning after. The marble floors, which only hours ago shimmered with music and laughter, now carry a soft chaos: overturned goblets, trails of glittering nectar, and the unmistakable quiet of divine hangovers. You walk through it all carefully, as if exploring the ruins of a dream. The air smells faintly of honey and ozone. You step over a fallen lyre, still humming with leftover magic, and nearly trip over Hermes, who's asleep under the table, clutching a basket of bread rolls like treasure. Someone's snoring softly. You think it's Ares, and from the balcony, a faint, half-conscious voice mumbles, "Never again, I mean it this time," which could only belong to Hera. The first divine dinner party is officially over. You find a rag, or something close to one. It turns out to be Aphrodite's shawl. Oops. And begin tidying up. There's a sort of peace in the routine, stacking golden plates, sweeping fragments of ambrosia crystals, wiping away droplets of wine that still sparkle faintly, refusing to die. Hera eventually appears, barefoot, holding her sandals in one hand and her dignity in the other. The goddess who commanded the heavens last night now looks every bit like someone who has been through a lot. And yet, there's an ease to her, a quiet amusement.
She watches you work for a moment, then sighs. "It went better than I expected," she murmurs, brushing glitter from her hair. You raise an eyebrow. "Better?" "Well," she says, counting on her fingers, "no one turned into a cow, no temples collapsed, and Zeus only singed one harpist. That's progress." You smile. "Are you going to host another?" She hesitates, that queenly pause between pride and memory. "Historians still argue whether I ever did," she says with a smirk. "But if I did, I learned to serve less wine and invite fewer titans." You laugh, and she joins in, softly. It's strange to see her like this, not divine and distant,
but almost mortal in her fatigue, her humor, her need to make sense of the night before. You realize that even gods, for all their perfection, crave what mortals do, a sense that what they've done meant something. The sun rises higher, scattering gold across Olympus. Statues catch the light. Doves stir from their perches. The world begins again, unbothered by the hangovers of gods. You finish sweeping and look down from the balcony. Far below, the mortal world stirs, cities waking, fishermen yawning, lovers parting with sleepy smiles. The same sunlight that graces Olympus brushes the shoulders of farmers and poets alike. And for a heartbeat, everything feels connected, divine and human, chaos and calm, memory and mourning.
Hera joins you at the railing. "They'll make songs of this," she says softly. "They always do." "They'll get it wrong," you reply. She chuckles. "Of course, but that's how stories work." You glance at her, the queen of heaven, ruler of the skies, mother of myths, and she looks, just for a moment, at peace. Then she straightens her crown, sighs in a tone that means back to work, and says, "Come on, let's clean the clouds before Zeus wakes up and blames me for the mess." You follow her inside, the sound of her bare feet soft against marble, the faint tinkle of celestial dust trailing in her wake. By the time the rest of Olympus begins to stir, the evidence of last night's chaos has almost vanished. The halls gleam again, the thrones are upright. Even the harp hums a quiet tune of forgiveness. But if you look closely, in the corner of the table, behind the amphora of figs, you can still see one small, stubborn stain of spilled nectar. A memory, a reminder that once, even gods gathered to laugh, argue, and toast under the same tired stars as mortals. And maybe that's why Hera threw her dinner in the first place, not for power, not for spectacle, but because somewhere deep inside the divine machinery of Olympus, even immortality longed for the simple warmth of a shared meal.
The noise of Olympus fades to a whisper now, a faraway murmur, like waves turning over pebbles in the shallows of time. The clouds have thinned, and the air feels warm, slow, and safe. You can almost smell that faint trace of ambrosia, sweet and strange, drifting past like a memory that's decided to stay kind. You don't need to think anymore. The feast is finished, the laughter has dimmed, and even the gods have gone quiet. Every cup has been emptied, every light dimmed, every story folded back into the endless fabric of the sky. Your breathing steadies. Each inhale brings the coolness of marble halls. Each exhale lets them go, piece by piece. The columns blur, the torches flicker out, and the hum of divine chatter becomes nothing more than a lullaby of wind and distant thunder. In the space between heartbeats, you can still see Hera's crown, faint and silver against the dark, and maybe she glances once more your way before turning toward dawn. She knows you'll remember this, even if no one else does. The first divine dinner party is over. The mountain sleeps, the sky sighs. And somewhere beneath it all, so do you. Sweet dreams.